welcome to all our viewers. Bienvenidos a todos nuestros amables oyentes. Willkommen, meinen Freunden. Ciao a tutti nostri amici. My friends, all is possible once you watch our show. Hello, my name is Chris Pabon, and in addition to being expendable today, I am one of your co-hosts for our show. This is a unique show today, as it will be my pleasure to welcome a very special guest later on in the show who will bring a unique insider's view of our latest episode of Discovery. But first and foremost, before we get to this, I would like to welcome our show co-host and resident Dahar Master, Joss Pritchett. Joss?
Hello and success to everyone.
Thank you, Joss. Before we get set to fly, I have an announcement for everyone out there. Many of you follow us under the call sign Trekkies on Deck. And while this has served us well, like Discovery when they first arrived in present time or future time, we felt the need to upgrade ourselves. So we are disconnecting ourselves, and we will still be the same show, but we will be henceforth known as Rediscovering the Federation. We hope you all agree that this is more in line with the heart of the show that we all love. And before we get into our very special guest, we will do a brief recap. So, Josh, let's fly.
Let's fly. Okay. So there were 3 major story arcs going on in this one episode. The biggest one, of course, was Tilly and Adira were leading a group of Starfleet Academy cadets on a training away mission. They were supposed to head to a Class M moon to do some basic surveying and, learn from Tilly on the best ways to do things, when suddenly they hit a subspace, a gravity well, and ended up crashing into a Type L moon. For those of you who are not familiar, Class M worlds are very habitable and ideal for setting up colonies or finding life. Class L is got breathable atmosphere, but is notoriously hostile to other life forms. So they're on the planet, and you have these 4 cadets. One human female from Titan, which we saw in last season's episode, in an episode from last season on Discovery. A Tellarite whose family was trapped on the wrong side of the border during the Emerald Chain years, and suffered greatly. His family suffered greatly as a result. And an Orion cadet. And Tilly has to navigate trying to get these guys to work together and also find a solution for which to rescue them, to get themselves off the planet. And it really becomes very interesting because the Tellarite cadet and the Orion cadet, neither of them at first can get along with one another because of a lot of bad memories. Until Tilly reveals that the Orion's grandfather was a political dissident in the Emerald Chain who spoke out against enslavement. And as a result, the Tellarite cadet and the Orion cadet, start to be able to work together. The human female, she's a lot more intimidated because Earth, the Earth solar system has become so isolated since the burn. She's not seen very many non-humans. So it's very nerve-wracking. It's a little bit nerve-wracking for her at first. So they have to abandon the shuttle and have to try to get to this ridgeline in order to send a signal to the starship that they were supposed to rendezvous with. But they are pursued by a monster that seems to be like half crab, half tentacle creature that's burrowing through the ice of this of the surface of this moon. Eventually, they're able to get to this ridge line, which the, sort of think like Dune, where the creature can't follow them up onto it. But Tilly has to distract the creature so that the cadets can send out a signal to the starship to come rescue them. And eventually, of course, they're able to learn to work together and start to become friends. So it was a really good story arc. Chris?
The second story arc of the episode centered around Book and Dr. Culber. And what I really liked about this is the theme of it is not easy to get over trauma of loss, especially, of course, the loss of your own homeworld. And you see that the Vulcan mind meld didn't last that long in its effects in calming Book down. So he's in therapy with Dr. Culber, and I really enjoyed the setting of the conversation. It was very reminiscent of what we saw with the new 10-4, that it seems relaxing, inviting, calming, soothing, which is something that earmuffs all the TNG fans out there. I always thought the set design, like Deanna Troy's office, was like very cold and not very welcome or embracing for people to spill their guts. So I like the setting of this, and I very much like the conversation, because it's difficult at first for Book to admit that he can be helped. And Dr. Culber's trying to dig in there, and he tries to use the example of making an artifact for Book's homeworld that he would use to try to help deal with the hurt that he's experiencing. And at first, Book is talking about how this proto-matter is not the same thing, and sort of like reminiscent of the use of clay. He tells him, you got to form it into the object. And so Book at first fails, which is reminiscent of his failure at first to deal with the trauma of the loss, until finally he's able to reproduce the object. And he tells Dr. Culber, well, yes, but it's not the same. And Doctor says, well, that's the point, that things will never be the same henceforth. But you still have to, carry on. And, besides, it's showing the value of Dr. Culber, who we've seen before as a doctor, but as a therapist. This also, puts out the point that this is going to be a process for Book, and it's not going to be easy. And as much as he wants things to be the same, they never will. So he has to learn to cope with this and deal with the new reality moving forward, which is something that everyone who suffers through trauma has to deal with. So I thought this is a really important part of the show. And I especially like that at the end he asked Dr. Culber, do you have something that you want to talk about? And of course he does, because as we know, as our history of viewers, that, he's gone through literally a life and death situation and extreme isolationism. And he says, I do someday, which I think is also very good, because it would be unrealistic to expect the doctor to suddenly open up to his patient. And even he acknowledges that the relationship between patient and doctor is so much skewed because they serve in the same ship. But all of this, I thought, was really well done, and was a very strong second storyline within the episode.
And of course, finally, the third story arc, which we had, took place on Navarre during the closing, what were supposed to be the closing negotiations to reintegrate Navarre back into the Federation. At the last moment, Turin, the Navarre president, tells Federation President Relic that they want to add a clause to their agreement that Navarre can exit the Federation at any time it needs to. And of course, this is not acceptable to Relic. And so, without really saying it, Michael and Saru realize that because of their unique relationship to both the Federation and Navarre, that Relic wants them to find a way to salvage the situation. During which Saru spends some time with the Vulcan Navarre president Turin, and she teaches him about how to meditate in the Vulcan Navarre manner. And that seems to be building on their rather intimate relationship that seems to be developing between the both of them. Like at one point, he's looking at her, and she says, "Your eyes are supposed to be closed, Captain Saru." And ultimately, what happens is they address the situation of that Navarre felt as though it and other worlds' needs were not being met by the Federation, and that they need assurances that this time the Federation will be more open to its members, or will hear out their members more. And so Michael suggests that since she is both a citizen of the Federation and of Navarre, she will be that go-between, that if Navarre has any problems, they can go to Michael. Michael can intercede on their behalf with the Federation president. I was a little bit confused about that, because shouldn't that be the job of the Navarre ambassador to the Federation? But I'm sure that will be addressed later on. I think that they just wanted an assurance that their demands, their desires would be met going forward. And then, of course, it ends with Relic revealing to Michael that she had a source, and Michael figuring out it was Taren that was told her that about this clause that was coming through, and that she needed her help to find a way around it. But Relic couldn't come right out and say that, which kind of goes back to something I've always believed, that if you have a secret you need kept, tell it to a Cardassian.
Well said. So I think that was a great recap of the episode. And as I mentioned at the start, we have a very special treat for all of you. Friends, when we think of a movie, our concept often is influenced by the pace of it. Our perception of whether it was too long or disjointed comes down to the efforts of the film editor, who often is an unsung hero of film production, because they share responsibilities with the director of taking hours of film and making it the movie we ultimately watch and enjoy in the theaters. Likewise, scoring a film is important, because while we may not think of a specific movie every day, nor remember years later every scene of the movie, we will remember a movie as soon as we hear its score. Either task by itself is daunting, but someone who can do both, almost unheard of. And yet today, we have one such person, who, in addition to being a composer and an editor, is our director for the latest episode of Discovery, All Is Possible. I am elated to introduce to all of you Academy Award winner and Trek director, John Ottman, who is joining us today. John?
Hey, are there?
Yeah,
we are here.
We can hear
Hey.
you.
Oh,
Good
am I not
morning.
visual? Oh, this is all audio.
Yeah.
It's audio for right now.
We'll get
okay,
to
guys.
video
All right. I'll just go along with whatever you guys tell me to do. All right. Hey, how you doing?
Good morning.
Good morning. We're very happy to have you here.
Well, I'm glad to be here.
John, so would it be possible to talk with you about some of the aspects of the show that we thought really worked for the audience, and maybe you could provide inside view of how those came about?
Sure. Yeah. Ask away. Hopefully I'll remember. It's all a blur now.
Well, first of all, I thought that it was a very good episode. I think it's going to be a great standalone, and it just touched so well the micro and macro aspects of the difficulties of pulling the Federation back together. That in the micro sense, you have what's going on with the cadets on the planet, which was a beautiful homage to the classic Trek episode Galileo 7, and then and the larger macro aspect is like the difficulties it'll be to pull the Federation, back together. So my first question is, when you get together with the writers in putting together the episode, how much influence as a director do you have in the thrust of the overall storyline, and or is there an overall arc that you're told that you sort of want to stay within, but you can put your own spin on it?
Right. Well, it's a little different in television, where I'm not really involved in the development of the episode script-wise until I'm given it, and then I can address things that I think practically should be cut or expanded or so forth, and to make the episode better. And certainly they look to me for budgetary considerations as director, because we were $1 million and change over budget for visual effects, and so how can I creatively figure out ways of cutting $1 million out, which is a tremendous number of effects, and still tell the story. TV is different because I get 4 days in the editing room, and then it's bye. We have your episode now. We can do what we want to it. So my version was a lot longer. So there's a lot of cuts made. I was surprised to see, but this is TV. This is what you have to expect as a television director. But having said that, yeah, I think I was really happy to get this particular episode because not only of the challenges, because of all the multiple locations and moving the company and so forth, and the short shooting times that we would have for such an episode, but also because it's sort of a standalone episode in a way. It doesn't depend on the larger arc of the season for the DMA and so forth. So in that regard, I was able to sort of feel like it was a little more classic Trek than perhaps another episode I might have gotten.
Can you talk a little bit about the inherent difficulties of filming like on stage and also filming in exteriors? Because there's that whole scene on the planet seems to be an exterior shot. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, well, the funny thing is first of all, when you shoot outside, you only have the time of the day, and you're screwed because you can't get a full 14 hours of shooting or 12 hours of shooting because of the sun going down. So, and because when you get there in the morning, there's also hours of setup time before you can even start shooting. You're already losing the sun. So we had that problem both outside in the snow and also in the VAR boardroom, because the windows were 30 feet tall all around. So basically, it's almost as if we were outside with no control over the environment still. And originally the VAR sequence was far longer and more complicated politically. And so it was pages and pages and pages and pages of stuff to shoot. And it's funny when you see the final episode, it's basically so pared down. But also the snow scenes it was interesting. My concept for the planet was, of course, to be so absolutely insanely inhospitable. So I had them bring out wind machines, and we had fake snow to throw in front of the fans. And of course, on the day, we had almost like a whiteout before we started shooting, and the winds were so high that we had to abandon the camera crane because it was too dangerous. So we had to go handheld. Those are some of the challenges, in addition to losing 4 hours because something went in an actor's eye. So things you have no control over.
Do you have some questions for our guest?
Yes. John, I was wondering if you could talk to us briefly about how the editing process has changed over the last 30 years since you first edited the film Public Access to this point. Has technology made it easier or more difficult? What are your feelings on that?
Oh, well, I think, it's a double-edged sword. I mean, basically, technology has made it easier. So you can do things faster, and you can do multiple versions and so forth. But that's also I think, been a detriment to the art of storytelling, because it used to be when you were under the confines of film editing, and there was no time to do like, hey, I'll slap 7 versions against the screen. Basically, you had to have a vision as an editor or as a filmmaker, or the director did, as to how they preconceived the scene in their mind's eye already, and then make that scene, and encountering landmines, of course, and then have to rejigger or do pickups or whatever. So there was a singular vision, and I think more of a consistent vision throughout the movie. I think when film editors learned the digital medium, you still had that quality of storytelling. But I think when the new generation sort of didn't come up under those constraints, and they were given this technology, producers, know that, oh, well, let's do 17 versions of that sequence, and because we can, and then of course last minute second guessing, and it happens all the way to the dub stage. So I think that's one of the detriments of the technology. But basically, if I was asked to go back and edit and cut on film again, I would say forget it. But at least I have those sensibilities born in me as a storyteller, because I had to be on a slicer so many years ago.
So just to follow up, so you would say that it has given a lot more freedom, but it's also created a lot more work too, because when you were talking about how a director will shoot the same scene 17 different ways, and then the editor it creates a little bit more work there.
Yeah, I mean, I think you definitely can get more footage as an editor and be overwhelmed by it, because, it's digital, so you're not burning film necessarily. Although having said that, I had, I think, 1.5 million feet of film on Valkyrie that was on film. So there was a tremendous amount of stuff we shot. But I lost my train of thought, but there's another negative of this whole thing. Oh, the only other negative is in the I know it's not like an old fart, but in the past, when you presented your first cut on the screen, and it was all, splice marks, and literally some of my blood from my fingers streaking across the film, and you had dissolved that were a grease pencil that were drawn across. People knew they were watching a work in progress. And so everyone assumed, oh, this is just going to get better when it's negative cut, or when the real score is on there, because the temporary score is in mono, and then like all these terrible edits. But now with digital, when you're first showing of something, it's so polished, it's in stereo, and so I think executives or producers have less ability to know, hey, this is not it. This is the work in progress. This is the first cut, But anyway, there was a sort of a romantic notion that when you watch something look so terrible on screen that it just the elation of getting an optical back and looking at the dissolve, like, wow, was a revelation, and now it's just like, you just push a button.
John, how much input do you have on the set design? I mentioned that the scene between Booker and Dr. Culber was like in a very welcoming setting. When you go into the episode as a director, are you told, okay, this is what you will work with? Like, we want this is how the design is going to be of like Dr. Culber's room, or you mentioned the 40-foot windows for like, the political scenes in Navarre, or how much input as a director do you have come in and say, like, I don't want the windows to be this tall, or I want the setting of this conversation to be like more welcoming? How does that work practically when making the episode?
You have a lot of input. Obviously, everything has to be approved, because if you screw with a set and that's been established, you have to sort of, there's a lot of memos that go around. I wanted if you look at Discovery, it's all these hard floors, and it seems like a very cold place to live. And I was thinking to myself, if this is a therapy office, he would have a rug on the floor, and I want it to be warm and an inviting place, obviously. And so we really played up the warm light coming through the windows, because fortunately we had the excuse to do it because we were orbiting Navarre. And so I would say I had a good amount to do with the look of that scene, along with my VP I worked with. As far as the Navarre boardroom, that was decided where we're going to shoot before the episode even shot, because of COVID. There was like a very, very extremely short pre-production times, and so a lot of decisions were made beforehand. Originally, I was supposed to be a set, I believe, and it was at the last minute decided to go on location. In one way, it was nice to go on location because it's different looking and it's real. Another way, like I said before, you have zero control with those windows over your environment because they were so large you couldn't use tarps to cover up the windows for HMI lights and so forth. But you know, but yeah, so there is input, and same with the boardroom. There was these panels that were put along the wall to make it look more like a Navarre boardroom, and I had some input on improving those panels and the size of the window, which was fake. That was actually a wall, that's actually a big window that's behind them. Because if it's wider, then when you do your close-ups, you're going to see the edges of the screen. That's another visual effects shot. So I decided to just make the window wide as possible. But then if we went into any close-ups like huddled near the corner, we would just fake it and put like something to hide it, because you wouldn't even know the geography of the room, whether the window really should be on the edge of the frame or not. You know. As it turned out, the scene was so shortened that that wouldn't be a problem anyway. So.
As a director, when you come into the episode, how much leeway are you given to kill someone? I really enjoyed in this episode how of the cadets, you killed one of them off, because I thought it harkened back to the first episode when the president is having the conversation with Burnham, when it says one of the difficulties of command is that you have to accept responsibility that not everyone is going to come back. I mean, someone may die, and Burnham is so opposed to that. And so I loved that in the episode, one of the cadets from the start doesn't make it, and that's one of the things that has to weigh on Tilly, since he's like in command of that. So how much leeway do you have?
Well, that's scripted, so I don't have any power over whether a character lives or dies. But I apologize to the actor ahead of time, saying, well, maybe you can come back as an alien sometime, because you're going to be in this episode for a nanosecond. But because he was a good actor, actually. Yeah, I mean, we actually initially had played up his death more, whereas Tilly is in such shock. Actually, the cadets are in such shock, and she looks at the cadets, and they're still shell shocked that he's dead. But that was cut out. So basically, he is found dead, and she gets up and needs to go about the business. But he did have a little more screen time to have some convulsions and then die. But anyway, yeah, I don't have any control over life or death.
Josh, go ahead.
I loved how you phrased that, Chris. Leeway to kill somebody.
I wish. I would be ruthless with my phaser.
Your phaser would definitely not be set to stun.
No, it wouldn't.
So one thing I wanted to ask you about is, there have been a lot of people that always ask about how they could develop their skills when it comes to becoming a film director or getting into television. And I read that you started out by setting up your own film studio in your parents' garage. Could you talk a little bit more about that?
Oh, sure. I mean, these were sort of movie sets that I built in my parents' garage to shoot, science fiction films, harkening either Space 1999 or Star Trek. And sometimes they got very extravagant. In fact, my parents' garage was only a 2-car garage, so we then ended up using my friend's garage, which is a 3-car garage, and so we could expand and then build some larger sets for this very epic space, hour-long Super 8 space adventure we did. And we had 30 extras, and of course all the neighbors were actors, and it was pretty big deal. Even made the local news. But yeah, I would make films there, and in their house, did a supernatural thriller inside my parents' house, and put dry ice all throughout the house, and it was pretty cool. But it was just all part of making movies since I was a kid. Those films were I was in I think I started doing those in elementary school. Yeah. And then so when I ended up at my first semester at USC, where you had to make 5 short movies, I was sort of a veteran already. So I just mine were the I don't know, let's say I was hated by a lot of my fellow students. I had like extravagant sound design, all this stuff, and there was actually a course where you were just supposed to have like a 4-minute scene and play a cassette tape, kind of with it, and I had like utilized the mag track of audio on the Super 8 film, and the ballad track on the other side. I had strikes on the other side, the sprocket holes. So I had like music track and effects and dialogue. So, I would make my films like 20 minutes, and God, teachers were cool with it.
Nice. So what attracted you to science fiction and also to Star Trek initially?
Well, I don't know what attracted me to science fiction originally. I mean, I think Star Trek was basically my foray into it. I mean, I was, as a little kid, I was watching the goofy Lost in Space. My dad one day says, you should watch the show Star Trek. This was in the reruns. I'm not that old. So like the early 70s, I would start watching, and it's a common story of guys my age who come home from school every day, run home and watch, Star Trek, or when it was showing that night, sometimes 5 days a week. And it not only, I mean, Star Trek to me is basically with many people my age or younger, shaped their entire viewpoint of the world. About not only inclusivity but of the future being a hopeful place, and it's about politics. Star Trek used to be about exactly, or still is, about current events, via allegory and so forth, and also the thirst for knowledge and the embracing of science and facts. And so it's very hard for people like me to have this cognitive dissonance about what's going on in the world right now, especially the U.S., where science is the enemy, and facts are not facts, sort of stuff. And it's mortifying to me. But anyway, so and a lot of that is because Star Trek, sort of like screwed me up in a way, because I see the world through the way it's not really happening right now. We have to have hope, I guess, that we will still see a world like Star Trek in the future.
I hope for that every day too myself. Just one more follow up on that. It really seemed like in this episode you struck a nice balance. You and the writer struck this nice balance that each story was this, this division that everybody was having, like the Navarre and the Federation, the cadets, Book and Colbert, and them trying to trust themselves and trust each other. How did you guys work that out?
Well, I mean, we talked about that. That's definitely what the episode was about in a way, and one of the subtexts of the episode. I guess I think a lot of that was also just working with the actors off camera. Again, everything used to be longer. The Colbert scene used to be much longer scene, and so I started them out looking in the camera lens at each other, sort of like, and it was uncomfortable for both of them at first, especially Book, and then the ice gets broken. But that was sort of cut out, and we kind of start in midstream. But even so, to get them in character, they would basically riff on each other before the camera was rolling, or actually when we were rolling, but before I called action, just like kind of just doing ad lib and getting into the character, and kind of for maybe about 30 seconds. I think people watching didn't know what the hell was going on the set, like what are they doing, But it got them into that mode, and so I like doing those kind of things with actors, so that when action's finally called, that they're more in it, and it feels more real, And so I guess in all the sequences, we tried to do that kind of thing. Yeah. The political storyline was actually very difficult because there was very subtle subterfuge going on between Tarina and Rillick, you know, and then subterfuge between Rillick talking to Burnham and Tarina talking to Saru about, you know, hint, hint, this is what we want to happen, you know, and it used to be also a little more multi-layered political drama that was going on, but it was sort of simplified. But anyway, so that was again working with actors to come up with those, to have it be nuanced but not obvious and so forth.
John, can you talk a little bit about the extra challenges that came about from filming during COVID?
Oh yeah. Well, you can basically knock off about a third of your time because of COVID, and also the pre-production was so short for a complicated episode because we had the rock quarry that we shot in was an hour outside of Toronto, where we did the snow scene, and luckily it snowed the day before because it was melting during pre-production, and I was so afraid it was going to be like a mud sludge planet. But yeah, COVID. Not only is it awkward, it's frustrating to you can't really talk to anyone. Everyone's wearing masks. The only time the masks come off in the face shields, if you're talking to actors, when we're ready to shoot, everyone vacates from the actors, and then the masks come off. So, and then a lot of the hair and makeup fixes, which already are agonizing for directors when you sit there as they come in and fix stuff. You know, do little touches on the makeup, and you're like looking at your watch, and then after that, then the hair people got to come in. Normally they would come in both at the same time. So just before you shoot, they run in there and do all their little fixes where you can't tell a difference afterwards anyway. But now they had to come in one by one, and you're like, you know, it's just, I can't see any difference, you know. So that adds a lot of time in terms of the formula. And how much time we were going to actually have to shoot. But other than that, it was just the frustration of not being able to talk one-on-one to actors or crew members when you're huddling, talking about scenes like with my DP or the production designer, and you want to huddle around a table and kind of hash it out. You have to be all in your separate rooms on Zoom, you know. So I'm hoping, you know, I would love to do another one, and it would be so great to do it without masks, especially when I was talking to David Cronenberg, and I just wanted to gush and, like, you know, and get on my knees. Oh my God, you know, because Dead Zone's one of my all-time favorite films, and I, you know, again, it was just awkward with masks because you really couldn't hang out very long. You know.
So to give people an idea of how much time is put into each episode, can you tell us when the episode was actually began filming? So people can realize how much time passes between, obviously we just saw it like this week, but how much time passed?
Oh my God, I'm terrible with time. Like I'll tell my friends, oh, last year we went to dinner, and they're like, John, that was 4 years ago. But I think it was almost a year ago that we shot that. And you have 12 days to shoot the episode. But I was there for 2 months because we had to space out my days. So because we also had the AR wall, and we had the shuttle set, which was being built while we were shooting the front part of the episode. So we had to wait till that was finished. So I hung out in Toronto in this little hotel room waiting for like the shuttle to be built, and during that time we learned the AR wall and so forth. But basically it's a total of 12 days of shooting, and it was, I think we started almost a year ago. You know. So yeah, there's a lot of time in post. First they have to get to they got other episodes. So once they get to your episode, then once I finish shooting the episode, then when the editor's ready, I will sit with the editor for a whole 4 days for an hour-long complicated episode. I mean, an episode is like, say, almost an hour, and a movie is 2 hours. You spend a year or, you know, editing a movie, and so if you cut that in half, it should be 6 months to edit an episode. And so basically you have 4 days as director, and then you're bye-bye, which is a world difference for me because I'm such a control freak, and I'm used to being in control of a film from beginning to end and having input, and more than input, basically shaping the film. So it's hard to let go. So you walk away, and then you watch it air months later. Many things to your surprise.
In addition to, you mentioned waiting for the people in hair and makeup to get the people ready so they can get back on set. What are some of the difficulties you face with people like Doug Jones who are in costume? And as a director, do you have to give them costume breaks? Because I imagine it's not easy for them to slip out of the costume even to just eat or go to the bathroom.
No, he's in that the whole day. So I feel for the guy, but I think I'm not going to say they managed to make it really comfortable, but I think they endeavored to make the prosthetic as natural for him to be in. So yeah, it definitely is not taking that on and off during the day. He takes his hands on and off, of course, and he'll take those strange shoes off, where they're up like giant high heels. If his feet aren't in the scene, of course, so to speak, his normal feet. But yeah, it's yeah. I guess I answered his question. He's in it all day, and I don't know what else other part of the question it was, but
it was just as a director, how much time do you have to allot in addition to hair and makeup, or when the actors need, I guess, the equivalent of a costume break?
Oh yeah, it's the same with the guys with prosthetics and with the hair and makeup people go in, or the I guess the makeup people go in because they're responsible for the masks and so forth, and sort of do touch-ups and so forth. And many times, if there's a budget, digitally they can clean up certain things or put in eye filters and so forth. But it's the same. It's really the same whether it's a prosthetic or a real person for the touch-ups. If it's going to be a complicated prosthetic, they're on for good. They're not taking it on and off.
Got it. Josh?
So you touched on this briefly, working with getting to be on set with David Cronenberg. What is that like? I mean, I know you said it was sort of intimidating, but how did you feel when you heard David Cronenberg was going to be back in the episode?
Oh, I was thrilled because I worked behind the scenes on season 3, just sort of overseeing some of the editorial posts. And I just was thrilled to see him on the screen. He's such a fun character with his big glasses and so forth. So when I got my episode, actually when I first got my episode, it was the wrong episode. For the longest time, I thought I was doing a different episode. And then all of a sudden, at the last minute, they were saying, no, you're actually doing this episode. So, and then I was thrilled to see David in the scene. So, you want more time to gush and hang out with someone like that, but we were on the AR wall and just no time. You run over. It's hot in there. We have our masks on, and I was just telling them, singing his praises, in the short time I had, and I said, I'm sure you hear all this time, and he goes, oh, I never hear it enough, So he's a very, very sweet guy, and I wish I had more time to hang out with him, but it was just so fast and furious, in the shooting.
Yeah. I probably myself, I would be very intimidated if I got to work with him. He's such an amazing person. So we've talked a little bit about the editing, but you've also been a composer. What are some of your inspirations on that when you get to delve into that?
You mean for this episode?
Yeah, with the music.
You have no input.
Things.
You have zero input. I mean, when I'm doing my cut, I will temp it with things as a guide as to what I think music should be like. But you're really not allowed to talk to the composer or anything once you leave. So I wanted to. I asked, "Can I call the composer?" And they're like, "No." So yeah, it's a different world for me as a control freak, but you're sort of you're at the mercy of what people are going to do. Yeah.
So in a lot of ways, you're kind of like the cadets. You all have to trust each other to
exactly.
make it work.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right.
It's cool. Yeah.
So this is a good segue to go into the final part of our show, where we talk about things that we believe might happen in the future. And of course, John, you probably have a better idea of what is actually going to happen, and probably can't, reveal all that you know. So
I'd be phasered, that's for sure.
You would meet with a mysterious transporter accident.
So moving forward, I'll share what I think might happen in future episodes. Josh, you can chime in, and then John, you can say whatever you're allowed to say, or you can wink at us if we're like hot or cold.
No, I can't do that. I can't even wink, but go ahead.
Understandable. Well, I'll start off with an easy one, which is I think moving forward, this is not the last we've seen of Tilly. I don't know when she'll come back, but the show has a history of, like with Dr. Colbert, for example, of characters going away for a while and then coming back. So I love the
I
work.
think that was sort of implied actually in the episode, because they basically, when she told Burnham, says, well, we'll see you around. It's not like, I think Tilly says, it's not like I'm never going to see you guys. I'll be at HQ or whatever, or So I think, or teaching cadets and not that far away. So I think that was sort of implied that perhaps she could appear again.
And by the way, that whole scene was very beautiful. And like you said, it was very touching, because it goes back to their time when they first started. And who of us have not had someone we've shared a room with that snores? I mean,
right.
Although we didn't have like the sound reduction mechanism that she had access to. So that's my easy one. And then, as I've said in previous shows, I think at some point during the season, we will go back to Bajor.
That would be cool.
Yeah,
I don't know, frankly.
Josh?
So I agree with Chris. We will see Tilly again. I think we're going to see more of the new Starfleet Academy. I know that for a long time, both fans and the behind-the-scenes people have wanted to see more of Starfleet Academy, see what it's like. So I would be really excited about that. I think we are going to probably see some more remnants of the Emerald Chain. It may have broken down, but that doesn't mean they're gone completely. And hopefully we will see a return of the Andorians back to the Federation. That would be interesting. As far as the DMA, I think we've gone over a lot of theories there, what that's going to be. But I
don't think you're going to guess it.
No, I'm not going to guess it this time. I think we're going to. I only
read the episodes leading up to mine, and only know of what I've been told is going to happen, sort of in a sketchy way. So, but from what I heard is I don't think anyone's ever going to guess it.
I don't think so either. I have a lot of confidence it's going to be something amazing. So I'm really looking forward to that. I don't know. I think I don't really have any other big theories this week. But other than I think Saru and Tren are, they're going to be another one of these power couples. There seem to be a lot of power couples on Discovery. You got Michael and Book. You got Culver and why am I blanking on these? Stamets. Thank you. You got Adira and Gray. And I think there's just a lot there. So that should
like
be.
Love Boat. It's like the Love Boat.
Now you got me thinking about that Patrick Stewart sketch from Saturday Night Live 30 years ago. Love Boat, the next generation.
Right.
Yeah.
I would say it's a power trio between Book, Burnham, and let's not forget Grudge.
Ooh.
Oh, right.
So Side note about Starfleet Academy, it does seem like we might be heading in the direction of perhaps a Starfleet Academy show at some point down the line. There used to be talk of an actual Starfleet Academy happening near Washington, D.C. It was going to be set, I think, in Winchester, Virginia. This was about maybe 2 decades ago. So if they were to come back to this idea, I'm sure there's a lot of stuff out there that they are thinking of doing again in the Trek universe. John, this might be shooting fish in the barrel, but I'm assuming you would love to come back and do any Trek?
I would love to, absolutely.
Can you share if there might be any talks of any future Trek, this series, or perhaps another series being spoken of?
You mean for me to direct?
Yeah.
No, there's no, I mean, they are not even they haven't assigned directors to season 5 or Strange New Worlds or anything like that, as far as I know. I mean, it's still, yeah, so you just hope you get the call.
Got it.
See what happens. So nothing's been slated.
Well, I certainly hope you do, because I thought this was an outstanding episode. I think it was well paced. I mean, totally well directed. It just, everything worked in this episode. So thank you for guiding it in such an effective way.
It was definitely one of my favorite episodes of this season so far. It was terrific. So we hope you get to direct more episodes of Discovery and also Strange New Worlds in the future.
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
It would be.
So.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, John, for joining us. Thank you, everyone, for listening. And as a reminder, we are rediscovering the Federation. Please come back next week to hear our take at Movers and Shakers Unlimited. I am going to set my phaser to stun for now and say goodbye. I am Chris, and you can follow me on Instagram at Verde Cosplay. Joss?
And I'm going to sheathe my batleth, and you can follow me as Josh Pritchett Jr. on Facebook. And once again, my short story collection, Bigfoot and Other Tales of the Supernatural, is available on Amazon and Kindle.
John, a very big thank you again for joining us. Are there any final
words?
Put my pants on now.
Thank you.
Yeah, feel free. Thank you again, John, for coming aboard and talking with us today. Live long and prosper.
Peace and long life.